Hey, real quick before the story starts, if you like lit reading, I've got something new you might enjoy. It's called New Tales Told, original short stories. Same voice, same vibe. Just search for New Tales Told right here in this podcast app. And just so you're not surprised, there may be some ads before the story. Sorry, we have to pay the bills.
Jumpstart your January goals at Whole Foods Market. They have hundreds of yellow sale tags for feel-good savings across the store. Explore sales on sustainable wild-caught sockeye salmon fillets, organic boneless chicken breasts, and many more quality finds to support your wellness journey. In fact, Whole Foods Market is the only certified organic national grocer. Shop Whole Foods Market with so many ways to save all month long. Terms apply.
Hi, I'm Don McDonald. Before we begin, a quick word. This story is inspired by something that happened to me many years ago. The feeling, the moment, the phone call that changed my life's direction. But the station is different, the people are different, and the man at the center of the story isn't me. What is true is the question he's forced to answer. Sometimes life gives you a choice that makes no sense on paper, and all the sense in the world once you say yes. This is The Right Call by me. Dave McDaniel was making more money than he ever imagined he would. 6 figures, an office with a view, and a Rolodex full of clients who trusted him with their futures. He was 32 years old, and by every measure that mattered to the world around him, he had made it. He had the trappings of success. The feelings didn't match. The thought came to him one night while he was driving home. The radio turned to KNTQ, the big talk station in town. There was an overnight show about money and business, and Dave found himself talking back to the host, arguing with the callers, filling the empty car with words that nobody heard. He did this most nights. He told himself it was just a way to unwind. But somewhere in the back of his mind, a different truth was taking shape. The idea came to him on a Tuesday. He needed to drum up more business, and his usual methods, the cold calls and the client dinners and seminars at hotel conference rooms, were getting stale. What if he ran some ads? Radio ads specifically, on KNTQ, where his target demographic was already listening. He called the station and made an appointment with their sales department. A woman named Brenda with a cheerful voice told him to come by Thursday afternoon. The station was in an unassuming building off the freeway, the kind of place you'd drive past 1,000 times without noticing. Dave found the lobby, signed in with a receptionist who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else, and waited on a vinyl couch until a salesman named Phil came out to shake his hand. Phil walked him through the rate card, the day parts, the reach, and frequency. Dave nodded along, but his attention kept drifting to the hallway behind Phil, where he could see people moving past windows, the faint glow of equipment, the suggestion of something happening just out of view. "So," Phil said, clicking his pen, "we can have our production team put together a spot for you. 60 seconds, very professional. We've got some great voice talent on staff." "Actually," Dave said, "I'd like to record it myself." Phil's pen stopped clicking. "You want to record your own commercial?" "That's right." "Mr. McDaniel, I have to be honest with you. Most people who read their own ads, well, they don't sound great. It's harder than it looks. We really recommend letting the professionals handle it." "I appreciate that," Dave said, "but this is something I want to do." Phil studied him for a moment, then shrugged. "Your money. Let me introduce you to Gary. He's our production director." Gary was a big man with a beard that looked like it had been growing since the Nixon administration. His studio was a small room crammed with equipment, reel-to-reel machines, cartridge racks, and a microphone that looked like it had seen some history. "So you want to record your own spot?" Gary said, not quite a question. "I do." "Phil tell you that's usually a bad idea?" He mentioned it. Gary grunted. All right, let's see what you've got. Dave handed over the copy he'd written. 60 seconds about his services, his approach, his invitation for listeners to call. Gary glanced at it, made a small notation with a pencil, and gestured toward the microphone. Whenever you're ready. Dave sat down. The headphones were heavy on his ears. Through the glass, he could see Gary at the control board, arms crossed, waiting. He read the spot. When he finished, there was a moment of silence. Gary was looking at him differently now, head tilted slightly, something like surprise in his eyes. You've done this before, Gary said in the talkback. No, I haven't. You sure about that? I think I'd remember. The door to the studio opened and another man stepped in. He was smaller than Gary, wiry, with quick eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Dave would later learn this was Vince Teller, the program director, the man who decided what went on the air and when. Heard that read, Vince said, from the control room. It's connected. Gary nodded. Not bad, right? Not bad at all. Vince looked at Dave. You've done this before. Dave blinked. Nope. Just a talk show fan. Always wanted to do one. Okay. What? Vince pulled up a chair and sat down across from him. Here's the thing. I've been doing this job for 20 years. I've heard a lot of voices. Most of them are forgettable. Yours isn't. You've got something. I've never done radio in my life. Would you like to? Vince leaned forward. I have a slot open on Saturday afternoons, noon to 3. Dave felt something shift in his chest. A door opening that he hadn't known was there. You're serious. I don't joke about airtime. I'm not going to pay you anything, but if you want to see what you can do, the mic is yours. Dave looked at Gary, who shrugged as if to say, Don't look at me. This is above my pay grade. Okay, Dave heard himself say. Yes, okay. He had 2 weeks to prepare. 2 weeks to figure out what he would say, how he would say it, and who he would be behind that microphone. He borrowed a yellow legal pad from his office and started writing. The station was a news talk format, and Dave's boss at the brokerage had given his blessing, even seemed excited about it, as long as Dave didn't talk about money. Compliance would freak out. So Dave wrote about local politics, about news, about the things people were talking about at diners and barber shops and office break rooms. He wrote transitions and introductions and powerful phrases. He wrote jokes that he hoped would land. He wrote the call-in phone number that listeners used, practicing it until the rhythm felt natural. By the night before his first show, the legal pad was full. Every minute accounted for, every word chosen. He barely slept. The Saturday board operator was a kid named Pete, barely out of high school, with a Metallica t-shirt and a seemingly permanent expression of mild boredom. He showed Dave the basics. These buttons, this knob. That's your mic. That's the phone. Don't touch anything else. You nervous? Pete asked. Terrified. Cool. Most people lie about that. Pete pointed to the clock. You're on in 5. Dave sat down in front of the microphone. Through the window, he could see the newsroom, a woman named Janet reading copy at a desk, a stack of wire service printouts growing beside her. Normal Saturday at a radio station. Nothing special happening. Except that Dave's heart was pounding so hard he could feel it in his fingertips. The on-air sign lit up. Pete pointed at him. Dave picked up his yellow legal pad and started to read. Good afternoon and welcome to the program. I'm Dave McDaniel, and for the next 3 hours, we're going to be talking about the issues that matter to you. The stories that are shaping our community, the questions that deserve answers. He read his introduction. He read his first topic. He read the phone number, twice, exactly as he'd practiced. The phone line stayed dark. Dave kept reading. He moved to his second topic, the city council's proposed zoning changes, something he'd researched for hours. He presented both sides, asked some rhetorical questions, invited listeners to share their thoughts. The phones didn't ring. He looked at Pete through the glass. Pete shrugged. Dave turned to his third topic. He was sweating now, the legal pad trembling slightly in his hands. The words that had seemed so crisp on paper felt clumsy in his mouth, wooden and false. He could hear himself, really hear himself, and he sounded like exactly what he was, a guy reading from a script, pretending to be something he wasn't. 30 minutes passed, the longest 30 minutes of his life. Then, finally, a phone line lit up. Pete's voice came through the headphones. "Got a caller. Line 1, lady named Dorothy." Dave punched the button. "Welcome to the program. You're on the air." "Hi, Dave." The voice was warm, older, with a hint of amusement in it. "Am I on the radio?" "Yes, ma'am. What's on your mind today?" "Well, I have a question for you, if that's all right." "Of course. That's what we're here for." There was a pause. When she spoke again, her voice was gentle, almost kind. "Honey, are you reading to us?" Dave's hand stopped moving on the legal pad. "I'm sorry?" "From that script or whatever you've got there, are you reading to us? Because I've been listening for a little while now, and you sound like a nice young man. You really do. But here's the thing." She paused. "Why don't you try talking to us instead?" The words hit him like a splash of cold water. He looked down at the yellow pad, at the careful handwriting, the prepared remarks, the safety net he'd built for himself. "That's a very good question, Dorothy," he said slowly. "So what do you say?" Dave took a breath. Then he crumpled the first page of his script into a ball and dropped it on the floor. "So, Dorothy, what should we talk about?" And she told him. Something about the mayor, a zoning fight, a decision that had been bugging her for weeks. Dave listened. He asked a follow-up question. She answered, and he found himself disagreeing with part of it, and he said so respectfully, and she pushed back. And suddenly, they were having a conversation. The phone lines lit up. The next 2 hours disappeared. Callers came one after another, and Dave talked to them. Not at them, not reading prepared questions, just talking, listening, responding, finding the rhythm of conversation, the back and forth that couldn't be scripted. When the show ended, Gary was waiting in the hallway. "Not bad, kid." "I almost bombed completely." "Almost doesn't count." Gary clapped him on the shoulder. "See you next Saturday." Saturdays turned into weeks, and the weeks into months. Dave kept his day job, kept making the calls and closing the deals, but his mind was elsewhere now. He found himself thinking about the show during client meetings, jotting down topic ideas on cocktail napkins, listening to the radio with new ears. Then, one Thursday, Vince called him into his office. "Weekday slot is opening up," Vince said. 9 to noon. Prime time. Dave felt the floor shift beneath him. What happened to Bill? "Bill's moving to Phoenix. His wife got a job. Point is, the chair is empty." Vince looked at him steadily. "You want it?" "That's 20 hours a week." 15 plus prep. But yeah, it's a commitment. "I have a job." "I know you do. Question is, which one do you want?" Dave didn't answer right away. He was thinking about the wood-paneled office, the power of the Bunker Ramo quote terminal, the clients who trusted him, the income that paid for his life. He was thinking about his parents who never understood why he wasted his weekends on something as frivolous as radio. And he was thinking about how he felt at the end of every Saturday show, walking out of the station into the afternoon sun, tired and exhilarated and completely alive. "What does it pay?" he asked. $500 a month. Dave almost laughed. "I can make that much in a day." "It's what we've got." "I'll take it." The first month was brutal. His savings dwindled. His former colleagues thought he'd lost his mind. His father called twice, once just to say, "What were you thinking?" and later to mention he'd heard there were openings at a financial firm downtown, just in case the radio thing didn't work out. Dave started selling ad time on the side. Anything to make ends meet. He voiced spots for car dealerships and furniture stores and an Italian restaurant out by the mall. The restaurant paid him in trade, so every Tuesday he'd show up with his voucher and eat chicken parmesan at the bar while the owner's wife asked him when he was going to get a real job. One evening he was at the grocery store, paying for his items with a trade voucher from a spot he'd recorded for the market. The cashier looked at the voucher, looked at him, and frowned. "You're that guy," she said. Dave tensed. "What guy?" "From the radio. The morning show." She smiled, unexpected and bright. "My mom listens to you every day. She says you're the only one who talks like a real person." Dave took his groceries and walked to his car. He sat there for a long moment, holding the paper bag, feeling something unknot in his chest. He still thought about Dorothy sometimes, the woman who had called that first Saturday, who had asked the question that changed everything. He never heard from her again. He had no idea who she was, where she lived, whether she even knew what she'd done for him. Maybe it didn't matter. Maybe some people come into your life for a few minutes and leave a mark that lasts for years. Maybe the message was more important than the messenger. Or maybe, Dave thought, she was still out there somewhere, listening. It was a Tuesday morning, and Dave stood in the control room watching the morning news block wind down through the glass. The studio was chaos, the way it always was between 5 and 9. Half a dozen people had cycled through already, anchors and reporters and traffic and weather, a constant rotation of bodies and voices and energy. Pete, no longer a kid but still wearing band T-shirts, was running the board, queuing up carts, keeping the whole machine moving. Through the glass, Janet was gathering her scripts, getting ready to hand off. 8:59:50. The legal ID hit. 10 seconds later, the chimes sounded at exactly 9 o'clock, and the network news began. 5 minutes of national headlines, and the clock was running. The changeover began. Janet pushed through the studio door as the morning producer squeezed past her going the other way. Pete was already pulling carts from the rack, swapping them out for Dave's show. Papers were swept off the console, coffee cups cleared, chairs adjusted. Someone bumped into someone else. A cart clattered to the floor, and Pete scooped it up without missing a beat. Dave moved into the studio, navigating the controlled pandemonium. The morning anchor grabbed his jacket and nodded on his way out. The newsroom through the glass was resetting, the night's detritus being cleared for the day ahead. 9:03. 2 minutes left. Pete slid into the control room, gave Dave a thumbs up through the glass. The last of the morning crew disappeared down the hallway. And then, just like that, it was quiet. Dave sat down in the chair. The mic stood waiting. The phone lines were dark but ready, and in a few minutes they would light up with callers, with questions, with conversations he couldn't predict and wouldn't want to. There was no yellow legal pad, no script, no safety net. The network news was wrapping up. Pete counted down with his fingers through the glass. 10 seconds. Dave leaned into the microphone, and the on-air light glowed red. A rush of adrenaline surged through him as a smile spread across his face. "Good morning. I'm Dave McDaniel. Let's talk." He knew it had been the right call. I hope you enjoyed the story. If you did, please tell a friend or two, and if you really liked it, leave a 5-star review at Apple Podcasts or a 5-star rating on Spotify. I'd also like to invite you to check out our many universes of short stories at shortstoryverses.com. I'm Don McDonald. Thanks for listening all the way to the end. You're officially a story finisher, and I appreciate that more than you know. If you're curious what else I'm up to, check out one of my other podcasts, New Tales Told. It's brand new, original short fiction written and narrated by me. Just search New Tales Told in this app. And thanks so much for listening to Lit Reading, now part of the Short Story Verses channel at shortstoryverses.com.